Speak to the Human is a podcast that explores how we build connections with people in their professional work. It's about the human experience at work and about how to foster that connection and belonging to support people and their organisations to flourish. I'm your host, Sarah Abramson, and I'm looking forward to you joining me in hearing from our brilliant guests. My guest in this episode is Ross Stevenson, founder and chief learning strategist at Steal These Thoughts. He helps learning and development professionals to harness technology to improve performance and skills in their organisations, and is, of course, now working a lot in the AI space. He has a no BS approach, helping to make technology adoption accessible and actionable. And he's a great communicator, with his regular email newsletters helping to cut through the hype surrounding AI, combining a reassuring understanding of the technology itself alongside a really pragmatic, human-centred and no-nonsense style with a sense of humour thrown in to boot. So welcome to the podcast, Ross.
Cheers. Thank you very much for that introduction. I should start getting some of these recorded and used elsewhere, because that would greatly help me when people say, "What's your bio?" I'm like, I don't know.
Let me play you this.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's start by, if I can ask you just to
Yeah.
sort of briefly tell us about the work that you do.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, so it's hard to describe in some ways. So a long time, I've been at L&D for nearly 20 years. I don't know how that happens, but it happens. I have been running my own show, I suppose you can call it, for about 3 years now. So I have a company called Steal These Thoughts, because Ross's L&D Academy was a rubbish name and I didn't really want to use that. So Steal These Thoughts it was. That existed, as you alluded to, because I've been writing a newsletter called Steal These Thoughts for about 7 or 8 years now. So way before it became trendy in the last kind of like 36 months to have newsletters. And it's all focused on learning technology. So I've always kind of worked in the space with enterprises, startups, scale-ups around learning tech, building it, using it, making it meaningful, making it practical. And basically what I've done today is just kind of amplified what I do with the newsletter. So I have about 5,000 people that read that for the space of learning and educational tech and how they can apply it practically, and hopefully get some common sense stuff out of it. That kind of my approach is like less of all the kind of, I don't want to say nerdy stuff, that's the wrong way to say it, but less of the technical stuff and more of the here's how to actually use it for you in your context and what you're doing. And now I do that for clients as well. So I've been very lucky where people read my stuff, they reach out and say, "Hey, would you like to come and work with us and help us do this stuff for technology purposes?" So I do a lot of work with clients on that. And then, of course, I have partnerships with different companies as well who are building products in advisory capacities and also collaborative capacities on many kind of different things that they're doing. So what I do is very much a mixed bag, but I suppose the easiest way to kind of describe it is that I'm more nowadays of an analyst and researcher, and kind of sharing that from the market movements to people in our industry who are as nerdy as I am.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. I read your newsletter regularly, and I'm not a technologist, and it makes sense to me. And I think it really is grounded in that kind of practicality and all of that. So yeah, it sounds like the work that you're doing is pretty broad ranging, but I think fair to say that you've been anchored in learning and development. So it'd be interesting to hear from you what you're seeing happening in L&D at the moment with AI adoption in particular, and how fast
Yeah.
things are changing on the technology front.
Yeah, multi-million-dollar question. I think the technology front, evidently rapid change. I think can't keep up with it, if we're quite honest. Like, people always say to me, "Oh, you seem to know all this stuff." I can barely keep up with it. It feels like it's changing every 25 minutes when my phone pings off and something else has happened. So I think we can definitely say from the tech perspective, completely transformed. Whether we're aware of all of it or not is another question. In terms of what L&D teams are doing, I think it's far ranging, right? And I think many different companies and teams have different views of what adoption looks like. So it's really interesting to not only collect the data that I get from my audience, where I have, as an example, this AI kind of maturity tool where people will come on, they'll answer a few questions, and it gives me an understanding of where most professionals and teams are in terms of their maturity today. And I think as we speak now, it's had about just over 500 people that have kind of answered that. It's consistently live. And most people still sit in an exploration phase. So there's 4 levels, and level 2 is exploration. So if we think about that, we're kind of 3 years removed now from when ChatGPT first came out in its version 1 and kind of heralded that generative AI stampede that's happened. And most teams are exploration, but that's fine because so many things are happening so fast. It is really difficult to understand what's meaningful and how do we practically use that to get some ROI. And the reason why I say that is because there's so many, I say quote unquote, case studies out there where I think, well, yes, you're using AI, but is it really meaningful? And I think one of the kind of the elephant in the room with that is it's mostly content creation in the L&D industry. For most industries, it is that at the moment. It's kind of the low hanging fruit. It's the obvious, simplest thing to do. But I think that the L&D industry, and maybe in marketing would share this, is that maybe it's not the biggest return on investment or value because people are already overloaded with content. Everything's so content centric. It's like you kind of elevating potentially bad practices and using a superpower to build even more there. So it's really interesting to understand that some companies see that as amazing and see that as adoption and see it as, oh, this is fantastic and we're using AI and doing this. I am not in agreement in that, as you can probably sense, but and I think there are other L&D teams who are really trying to solve the puzzle of, okay, how do we collaborate with these tools? And they're really clear on, well, actually what that looks like is helping us do better work and helping us enhancing what we're doing, not outsourcing our thinking to all the tools, not outsourcing everything that we do. So it's a real kind of like up and down landscape in terms of who's doing what, who feels like it's valuable, what's the context around that for people. So there is kind of, I'd love to say to companies, it doesn't exist this one kind of framework where it's like, that's what good looks like and that's what good looks like for everyone. But it's really not the case. Everyone has different needs. Everyone has different contexts. Although, as I say, I'm not a huge fan of build more content. For some people in a one-person L&D team, that's a really, really big value proposition. For a company that's got 25 instructional designers and everything else going on, it's not. There's better ways to be using it and there's better inroads to make. So, yeah, I still think, look, the kind of TLDR, too long didn't listen, I should say, in that, is that most people are using it, but I still think most teams are stuck with innovations that are 2 years old. I still see people talk about very basic things with prompting an LLM or scratching the surface. And like I said, I don't think that's good or bad. I just think that's my kind of view on it at the moment, is that there's so much stuff going on. I appreciate it. It's hard to keep up and see what is actually valuable and what is meaningful. But I think as an industry, if we look at most of the solutions, L&D specific solutions, they're about 2 years old still. But that makes sense because, like I say, the industry, the people in the industry haven't gone further than that. So I'm not expecting anything crazier than that to kind of exist at the moment for that audience. So yeah, that would be, I think.
Well, I guess it takes a while to kind of adopt, and
Mm-hmm.
especially if you've invested previously in a whole way of doing things and you've built
Yeah.
teams around it and systems around it, it's not easy for
Mm.
organizations
Mm.
to move quickly, is it? But it's really interesting what you're saying there. I wonder if it'd be great to get your views on whether it relates to a sort of shake up in
Mm.
how we think about
Mm.
learning and acquiring
Yeah.
information, and whether this relates to a sort of different way of doing things where we've had content creation, we've had
Mm.
instructional design, but does it point to a new way of people learning and how L&D might look in the future, what the role
Yeah.
of L&D might be, and how employees are kind of pulling information themselves and building information themselves to suit what they need? Does the whole paradigm change?
The caveat is I don't know. Like dubious speculation. I'm looking at the signs most people are looking at. I'm looking at the trends and the kind of technological changes. But I think that the obvious answer for me is yes. How that actually looks like, I don't know. I'm kind of like looking at what people are doing, looking at the trends, and making, I don't know how to describe, like kind of pontificating on. I did something the other day about what L&D could look like in 2027, and I kind of said it'd be way less production heavy because it feels like it's really production heavy right now, and it's more focused on enablement. And what I mean by enablement is that working with stakeholders, being a performance consultant, being more of an individual that's kind of setting context in the organization or helping people understand their context, which is kind of a huge shift as an industry overall. We hope that most people are doing that, but I think it's probably only about 5 to 10% probably do that at the moment in time. So like a gun to my head, if someone said, what does L&D look like in 2027? I think there is a lot more potential involvement from AI in now, whether that's creation, I don't know. Maybe creation will come down, because I think what we have to kind of respect at the moment is across all industries. If we look at, I keep going back to marketing, but SEO is a prime example, search engine optimization, where Google has been the big player. Like Google search makes all the money, ad driven. That's where you go to find answers. But we're actually seeing that dropping now. Not huge at the moment, but what we're seeing is people go and talk to a large language model and do all their web searches through there. You're seeing the same in L&D, and I get that, because why would you go to an NMS or LXP that isn't AI enabled and doesn't have a chat interface to help you understand your context and then help you kind of like assimilate information or break down that information specifically for you, when a chat GPT, a Copilot or a Claude or whatever can do that? You're not going to win that fight. Like they're always going to go to that LLM. So that is happening. I think that's really interesting, because you're seeing people use it personally. And I know in organizations where the battle before, which was how do we stop people going to Google search and trying to find out how to do their job, it's now, well, people are going to chat GPT to go and understand about leadership and other stuff and that. So yeah, L&D will have to change how it works, because as I say, you're not going to win that fight. Like, a large language model is always going to win that fight, and people are going to go with what they know. So that's a huge shift.
What are you observing in terms of
Mm,
organizational attitudes to that? Like how much organizations are trying to control
mm,
what employees are doing, whether, I've heard stories about like crazy stories about organizations saying you must not use this, and then employees finding
yeah.
really creative ways around it, versus that kind of encouragement of
Mm, mm,
experimentation, sharing information, and kind of
mm,
embracing the possibilities, even if even if it adds risk, because we don't
mm,
quite know what people are doing yet, and the leaders who are
mm, mm.
setting that agenda maybe understand it a lot less than the people who are doing the experimenting. But what are you observing broadly?
Yeah, it's really varied, and it's varied in that it depends who's leading that team, and it also depends on, generally I find, if they're an enterprise, a scale up, or a startup. The obvious things is scale up and startups have a bit more breathing room. They're a lot more, you know, I don't say less legal framework, but they're a bit more risky in terms of, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll just go and buy a bunch of tools and we'll try them out and see what works best. And that's kind of an attitude there. It doesn't mean that I don't see that in some enterprises. I just think it really boils down to the characters who lead those teams. And to your point, you were just saying there, in terms of the leaders who are championing that, who are enabling that as well, but also those who understand it. I think there's very few at the moment outside of, let's say, the general population understanding of generative AI that really understand what's going on. So it's very hard for them to kind of make any markers of what could we be doing or what should we be doing. So I think it's really up and down. I mean, more in the enterprise space, of course, they're a bit more locked down, because generally what you find is they only have access to one or two tools. What you still find is that people are still using the other ones on their phone and just doing whatever. But then again, that's really no different to,
Mm.
like if someone said to you at work, you could only use Bing search from Microsoft, but Google's the biggest one. You're just going to use Google on your phone. You're just going to compare. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
You can't actually stop that. I think what people should more focus on is how can they help people understand the benefits of the tools they've got internally. And I don't really see that happen a lot at the moment in time. People are chasing so many things, they don't take the time to understand what do we actually have and what can we do with it. And then the other part of that is you just get some people that are completely blanket banned everything, or they've locked so much down that nothing's happening. And that's a really weird space to kind of be in. There's not too much you can do with that at the moment.
It reminds me of during COVID when some companies installed like tracking devices to see how much people were at their computers or using their keyboard. And so I was like, yeah, it's such a clear way of saying we do not trust you to do your
Mm,
job, and we're not going to treat you like an adult. You're a child and you will do what we say.
100%. Yeah.
Coming back to L&D, I mean,
Mm,
how much of a role do you think there is for L&D in developing those AI skills, whether it's prompt
mm,
engineering or whether it's confidence or whether it's ways of sharing, new ideas, use cases, that kind of thing. What part do you think L&D can be playing?
Yeah, I think they play a role in it with others. And the reason why I say with others is because what I find generally happens is that most teams, in an L&D perspective, have just been tasked and told, you need to make the company understand AI and do all this. That's not going to happen on their own. Mostly because, if we're quite open about it, is that L&D teams aren't tech people.
Mm.
So they don't understand really how the tech works. So that you need kind of this, like, they would call it community or coalition of people that involves tech teams, software engineering teams, all of these people that can come together and basically say, how do we build our approach to whatever you want to call it, AI fluency, AI literacy, and what does that look like? And then within the L&D team, it's then understanding what does that look like from a resources standpoint, what does that look like from an experience standpoint, and what are the things that we are actually trying to enable people to do. So yes, there's the technical stuff, which is predominantly you could probably buy a lot of it off the shelf or engage people to do that. But then there's also the elements of the actual, well, how do you think about this? What's kind of the operating system of how you work with AI in itself? So certainly have a role to play in that from a enablement of the technology, but also the broader human skills element, but also the kind of psychological bit about how do you now think about the way you work and what you do now that we've got artificial intelligence kind of let loose across many, many applications and many, many areas of work. So, yeah, involved, supported, but definitely as part of a larger ecosystem. But I appreciate not everyone gets that benefit.
I'm really glad that you brought up the word psychology there, because I think
Mm,
it's such an interesting part of this. And the psychology, the confidence, the way that people feel
mm,
about AI, that kind of range of attitudes that people have got at the moment. Some people are really fearful, don't
mm.
like it, just instinctively think there's something off. And
Yeah.
others who are kind of embracing it. And that I think I in the conversations I'm having, that kind of reflects what people are saying that they're doing. Is a lot of it's about confidence as much as
Mm,
it's about what they're how they're
mm.
actually using AI,
Yeah.
if at all. And I think that touches again on what you were saying at the beginning of that answer, where you're talking about technologists
Mm-hmm.
and L&D not being technologists, for
Mm,
example, or most. And that kind of psychology of thinking, for the majority of us who haven't got a
mm,
technology based background, that this is a world that we don't
mm-hmm.
understand yet. And in order to understand it, we have to somehow acquire this technology
Yeah.
capability that feels a bit
Uh-huh.
beyond us. Do you think that's true? And like, if how do we give people who don't see themselves
Mm.
as technologists the confidence to use what's in front of them?
Yeah, I think the way I look at it is you don't need to be an expert, you just need to be savvy. And what I mean by that is kind of across the board of most tech. Like, we all have smartphones, we're all using different applications, but it still astounds me that most people don't understand how algorithm based platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, and TikTok work and the signals from that, and how that decides a lot of stuff in their life and what they see and what they interact
Mm.
with. Even very simple things like mobile banking apps at one point was like outrage and uproar about moving from a traditional bricks and mortar model into that, but you don't even see that nowadays. And it's the same thing with AI. It's like, if we look at just generative AI, like AI as a whole is huge. It's a huge topic, but the waters are muddied now because there's been so much kind of marketing out there from product teams and marketing teams of big corporations. Is that people think everything that's AI is now what they see from a generative standpoint. But there's this real savvy stuff where it's like you can spend, there's many, many YouTube videos, there's many, many, what we want to call them, micro courses, short courses, 10 minutes where you can go off and understand, okay, so large language models, which let's say 90% of people are using for most of their stuff nowadays, you can go off and understand actually, well, how do they work? So then by understanding how they work, I can know what tasks they're going to be helpful with and what tasks they're going to be harmful with. And I don't, evidently I'm biased because I'm a nerd, but I don't think that's like, I didn't go to machine learning school or AI school or anything like that. But I've spent hours and I spent time with people to understand it more deeply. But on the surface, you can go there and get, oh, okay, so that's how this works here. Right. So in the future, if I want to go, here's my list of tasks, these are the things I won't do because it looks like it's going to be more harmful. And these are the things where it's actually going to excel. The reason why I say that is because I think just having that knowledge just opens up the world of what is actually possible and what are the limitations. And then that also then connects into the fact that where you get people who misunderstand how the technology works. And because of that misunderstanding, you get elements of where they start to fear it because they think it's going to take their job, or it's not good enough. It can't do all these things. But no one's ever said it's going to do all these things. It's just what they see in the media versus actually understanding. So I think there's a great deal of in taking 15, 20 minutes to understand most everyday technologies you're using to be like, well, how does that work? And why do I get X because I do Y? And then from that, you can then have a broader understanding of the systems that are around you that you're engaging with all the time and giving your data to and disseminating information, but then also make smarter decisions on what are you going to use, when are you going to use it, and why are you going to use it. So, but it's also that thing I finish off there is like, it's really hard to say, like when some people say to me sometimes, oh, I'm not good at tech, I'm not good at digital. I'm like, it's not 1998 anymore. You can't really say that. Like everything is digital.
Yeah.
So when you're in an organization, it's like you can't
Yeah.
say, if you're turning around to your boss or your team and saying, I'm just not good at tech. I'm like, yeah, I don't know how that's going to last here for you that long, to be honest, because we're all using smartphones, we're all using different platforms. So, but as I say, you don't have to be an expert. It's just being savvy. You're using all these systems, you're contributing to these systems. So it kind of makes sense to me. Like, don't you want to learn a little bit about how those systems work and what they're doing and how you get all of these different bits? So, yeah, I think in sum, it's just that I never say to L&D people, you do the learning, but in a digital world, tech is such a big part of everything nowadays. So the boring basics, if you want to call it that, just having that in place will help you go far, not just in L&D, but in your career in general.
I completely agree. I think that, and it comes back to that point about psychology, that I
Mm,
think a lot of people, and I've certainly experienced this kind of feeling when I've been sat in a conference room listening to somebody talking about how AI is going to take over the world and the hockey stick and all of that,
mm,
that it feels overwhelming and you feel like you're not sure if you're going to have a job and where it's going to go and how on earth you're going to upskill yourself to be able to deal with it.
mm,
And I wonder if, because you're so right, we all, of course, use technology all the time, but I wonder if what we need to do is kind of just break it down a little bit into smaller chunks. Like it feels like we talk about AI as if it is this one thing, which of
mm.
course is nonsense,
Yeah.
that is somehow taking over the world and is going to change everything that we do
Mm,
and take our
mm,
jobs away and all of this. Whereas actually, the way we've experienced technology over the last 30 years in particular, with the advent of smartphones and
mm,
the internet and all of that, is that it feels much more like one thing at a time. And if
mm,
we think back to how things were 30, 40 years ago, it would feel
mm.
absolutely impossibly massive if we were going to think about that as one step. But
Yeah.
we've experienced it as doing one thing at a time, figuring out one thing at a time,
Mm.
learning how to use a basic mobile phone and then a smartphone and then all the, like you say,
Exactly. Yeah.
mobile
Yeah.
banking apps and that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I wonder if it's just a sort of mindset and confidence around chunking down to what you
Mm.
can cope with, experimenting with that one thing without
Yeah.
feeling like you have to understand it all.
Yeah.
How does that reflect the way that you work? Do you find ways to help people think a little bit more that way?
Yeah. The easiest way to kind of help people think about it is to relate it to everyday things that they're already using. So it's funny, right? Because we say the word AI, but realistically, in the zone that we're talking about now, and all the hype, not the hype particularly nowadays, but all of the fanfare is about generative AI. So generative is what it says on the tin. It's about generating new content from existing data sets, whether that's images, videos, writing. But that's one subset of AI, right? AI in itself has existed since the late
Yeah.
50s in some form. And to your point of those iterations, that's how it's gone. But the problem is because it's such a specialist background subject, general population don't see that. They don't see, there's been predictive artificial intelligence. We've had machine learning. Machine learning sits around in a prime example is Netflix. Netflix has a recommendation system that basically says, you go watch a true crime drama. It then goes, all right, you must like true crime dramas. So here's another 50. And that's machine learning in practice. And you have machine learning on games consoles where it understands what people like, what they don't like, how they play, what they play, etc. So there has actually been this incremental evolution of AI. It's just that because it's not a front-facing technology, people haven't seen that. But because generative AI was the kind of one species of AI, if you want to call it like that, that blew up in the public eye, now it all kind of feels like this is all AI, but it's not. It's just generative. It's just we're creating stuff, but there's many things that are going on from autonomous AI and self-driving cars, as an example, even with AI agents. Self-driving cars in their form have existed again for like a decade plus, and no one's been having fanfare about that or going crazy and putting mad LinkedIn posts about, did you see that self-driving car and all these new releases? So it has happened. It's just happened in a strange way. Whereas like the phone example, which is a great example, we've all seen that and gone through it as kind of a general population. But the AI point, we haven't. So it all feels to most people overwhelming at the moment, where realistically it's kind of like, I know it's hard for people to do that. It's kind of slow down, pause, take a step back, and then look at, well, what are we actually dealing with here? And what we're actually dealing with is generative, which is all, like I say, all around. It's why we hear people talk about writing emails, writing documents, creating cute cat images and videos and all of this kind of stuff. It's because it's very firmly generative, which is one species of AI. And it's a very, very popular at the moment because for the general population, it has the most application
Hmm.
because we're all creators, we're all builders. So it makes sense that's going to be more popular than, hey, here's a self-driving car and how autonomous AI works, or here's how predictive AI works to look at the weather patterns and that. People don't care about that because they can't use it in their daily lives. So I think there's that element of, which I get is hard, but it's like you have to kind of cut through the noise to actually
Mm.
get back to, well, what is actually happening here? Like, you've got
Mm.
all people going mad on social media and etc. But in yourself, you have to kind of do your own research to be like, well, what is actually going on? Because what is not happening here is Terminator or Skynet or sentient AI that we see in films, like, at all. Like, I can't even get ChatGPT after 20 iterations to barely create a decent graphic to go on social half the time. So I'm not expecting it to take over the world or do anything at this moment in time. However, the perception in social media, which unfortunately can drive a lot of misinformation and disinformation from people who have no idea about the topic, have never researched it, causes this fanfare of, oh my God, I'm being left behind, or oh, this feels so overwhelming. So it's kind of like niching down to, finding people who've actually been doing this stuff for like 20, 30 years and building and actually know what they're talking about, not the latest 23-year-old who opened up an AI agent account and decided to create a billion workflows to write more blog posts. That's not going to be the way you're going to find it. But I appreciate that is hard and you have to know where to go and what to look for. But what I wouldn't want people to feel like is that, there's none of this kind of being left behind, because we're all, as you say, on this evolutionary journey together. No one, even the people who are creating this stuff, they know more bits in that realm, but we're all experiencing this in real time, as in, how is it actually giving value? Like, what's happening? We don't know. There's no one further ahead that can actually say that. So yeah, it's there's no concrete answer to that, but my thing would be, try and do your own research and focus on the facts rather than all of the kind of like clickbait that we
Mm.
see online that can just take you down several hundred holes, which are just not going to be beneficial to you in any way.
Yeah, because one of the things that I wonder about, and it'd be great to get your perspective on, is whether that sort of sense of needing to keep up with things, that there's this kind of momentum, you've got to be part of
Mm.
it, leads to a sort of, oh, we must adopt AI kind of
Yeah.
mentality. So you kind of, then you end up with a solution in search of a problem.
100%.
Whereas, I mean, actually, it's like any other technology, it's a tool and we
Mm.
can use it in an incredibly powerful way to solve
Yeah.
problems better than
Yeah.
we ever have before. But
Yeah.
those are problems, and we need to identify that it's a problem and AI
Yeah.
is a good solution for it. And
100%.
yeah, it'd just be great to get your perspective on how people seem to be approaching that, I
No,
think.
definitely. Yeah. I mean, I'd love for them to approach it in that way, problem first, but they don't. Like, that's just human nature, right? We want instant gratification. We've got FOMO and we want to be seen as, we're in this thing, we're part of this group and we're not being left out. So, yeah, I preach it to people consistently, and you've probably seen the newsletter, but it's not really a default operating mode for most people. It's like, where are the tools? Who's using what? What's out there? Let's go or use that. And I spend a lot of my time trying to convince companies not to do that and focus on, well, what are the things that you're actually solving? That's even what I do in my own practice and my personal use of AI. Like I haven't got every single AI tool. I've got very few. And I use very few because I'm very much looking at what are the things that I'm trying to get help with and what do I need for that. There may be some tools, further down the line that I don't use now that I might engage with. A prime example of that is that AI avatars have been around for ages now, for like 3 or 4 years, and I've never used them until about like 4 months ago now. And that was purely because there was a problem that had arisen. And I thought, actually, that would be a good solution now. But I wasn't jumping in when they first came out and everyone's making terrible robotic versions of themselves that barely move, look creepy, and got dead eyes and not really doing much because it has no tangible benefit. So the thing always is problem first, tools later. However, and people will definitely identify this who work in the same space as me, consultant advising companies, is that's really, really difficult when senior teams are kind of really high on the Kool-Aid and they just want to make a statement and they want to sign big deals and get things out there. But in L&D, that's really no different. Like
Mm.
teams are used to senior leaders going out, buying big tools, whether it's HRISs, whether it's NMSs or LXPs, just pushing them out to the company and then saying, make it work. So it's not anything new in that. It's just that if we could get people to that problem focused mindset, it would be fantastic. But of course, as I'm saying, there's a lot of cultural pull and cultural norms to fight against there, which is, really, really difficult.
Yeah. And so kind of anchoring it in that L&D space that you work in and thinking about that kind of problem-based approach, what kind of examples are you coming across of really good ways of solving sort of L&D centered problems with AI?
Yeah, I think there's ways I'd like people to do stuff. There's probably the overwhelming things that I see people do. I think the overwhelming things that I see people do is the content stuff.
Mm.
I'd love to see that change. I think, like I said before, it's kind of a default. I think it's easy to do, so most people do it and kind of we've adopted AI flag on that. The more innovative ways that I'm seeing people use stuff. So examples are being helping with the load with research and reporting in organizations. So whether that's through an assistant standpoint, whether that's through using an AI agent as an example to interact with users across a company, to survey them, to pull data, to then collate that data, to then create something out of that data, and then give the L&D team actions to take out of those insights themselves. I think that is really, really interesting. I think the other side is I'm still kind of on the fence with AI avatars, but I do think they have a place if used well. What I don't think is using them well is basically just converting your PDF or PowerPoint presentation into an AI avatar to talk over it. I do think there's more interesting use cases where, as an example, I was at a learning experience and it was an online one, and actually an avatar was in the waiting room to greet people and to talk to them about the experience and what was going to happen. And I thought that was a really interesting way of using it.
Hmm.
And I thought, okay, that's cool. So it's kind of there as like a greeting you, getting you set up, getting you prepared for what's going to happen. And then it came at different intervals in the session, but it was more used like this interesting coach in breakout rooms where it would join a breakout room and you could interact with the avatar and ask questions. It would ask you about what you're focusing on right now in the actual breakout room, and it would offer some kind of anecdotes. I thought that was like a surreal experience. I thought that was really interesting,
Yeah.
but I've not seen many people do that. I think that's a good one. And then my final one would be, I think, re looking at the way we assess whatever you call learning, right? I think for most
Mm.
companies and most education establishments, unfortunately, in my eyes, it's more focused on recall, not your reasoning. So it's all about quizzes and polls, and it's like, what do you remember after doing 3 hours of this experience or this online thing? I think that's just pretty poor in this day and age to be doing that, just to giving people multiple choice quizzes. Whereas actually, kind of related to, I suppose, I've seen this in the workplace where once or twice, but I was doing a certification for machine learning, funny enough, with Google. And at the end of doing this online certification, you did some kind of in person kind of interactivity as well, but a lot of it was online. And I thought, oh, great, here comes the 50 question, tick box thing that I have to do. But it wasn't. Instead, what happened is I had a AI assistant that came to work with me, And what it would do is it would ask me about what have I taken away from the course? And it would ask me to articulate to it, well, what do you understand about this bit? Tell me how you would explain this to someone else who hasn't done this course and doesn't understand any of the terms. What analogies would you use? Why would you use those analogies? And I ended up having a conversation for about 45 minutes going through what I'd actually been learning and then putting it into practice immediately and having to it really made me think of, oh my God, this was really pressure because I've got to think about how would I explain this to someone else and what analogy would I use? Why would I use that analogy? Does it make sense? And then it was, it was assessed me on that, I suppose, but it was just a really different experience where I was, oh my God, okay, so no questions, but I had this whole thing where it was like, okay, yeah, I understand that. And then it would also say, but here's maybe how you could improve that potentially. And here's some other ideas. And I was like, oh man, that's really smart. Obviously, I expect that from Google, but I thought that was just a really interesting way of saying when you're going through a learning experience and people are literally just, pressing next and they hit the multiple choice questions. I thought actually there was a whole conversational element there, which I took a lot away from. I actually think I learned a lot more from that experience because of that conversational element at the end. So I think those are the three that I would like to see more of. I don't see a lot of, unfortunately. I see a lot of the more that I call it the Amazon delivery model of one-click content creation, where it's like, create me a PowerPoint or create me a course. I'm not really sold on them. I'm more kind of looking at what are either features within tools or what are tools standalone that are able to help people think differently, do things differently, and also nurture kind of that human reasoning. I think more of that is coming. We're seeing, what I'd call proper AI coaches coming out, AI tutors are starting to slowly make their way into the marketplace now. So I think over the next 6 months, it would be really interesting to see how they land and how people take to them and some of the case studies that come out of that.
That's super interesting. I think such a brilliant example, that third one, especially about
Mm.
finding a way to make it that it makes you work harder, that, you've got to be more analytical, you've got to be questioning, you've got to have those
Yeah.
critical thinking skills, much more than regurgitation of memorized information. And
Mm.
that's really powerful. That's much more
Mm.
helpful
Mm.
to us. And it makes me think that, the last few months, there's been a lot in the media in general, public discourse about sort of loss of creativity, which I think is
Mm.
probably well founded, because if you
Mm.
do just use the one click approach that you're talking about, and get it to write for you and you just publish it, you are skipping a step. And if that's
Mm.
how we started to bring it into education or to replace human
Mm.
creativity, then yeah, I mean, that is something we should be
Mm.
questioning. But I I struggle to believe that we're going to allow that to happen, because humans, we're innately curious, innately creative, and
Mm.
I struggle to believe that we're going to want to lose that. I think we just do think that way. We want to find things out. We
Mm.
want to explore and ask questions. Um, so I wonder how it will develop over the next months and years, with that
Mm.
kind of sort of harnessing the power of making us work harder, not work less. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Probably do both at the same time.
Yeah. But that's the beauty of this, isn't it? Is that we don't know, and we're seeing it evolve, and everyone's building their behaviors with it. And I fully agree with you. I think, I mean, even Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI that created ChatGPT, even he said that human writing, human experiences are now the premium, because what's happened is that everyone now effectively has, in Microsoft words, kind of like access to intelligence or some form of intelligence on demand, so they can expand some of their capabilities. Doesn't necessarily mean they're building more skills, but they can expand their own capabilities for a while. But I think you're already starting to see there's a little bit of backlash of, well, I want more human infused in that. I want, has a human reviewed this? Has a human edited that? And I do agree. I think, the one click thing, definitely in L&D, it feels very like it's everywhere now. It's rampant. Like everyone's doing everything to turn that around. But we'll definitely get to a point, I think, where it'll be like, right, how do we bring more human into this? And the prime examples of that, you already see it on social media and stuff, where people can tell a mile away if you've used an AI tool unedited. Like, I got no problem if you use an AI tool to write something, but you've actually proofread it, you've reviewed it, you've added your own bit in, and you can tell it's not just completely AI generated. I think there is an issue if you just go to these tools and just copy and paste whatever's there, because everyone's using these tools, so
Yeah.
they know the structure they're using. It's so obvious
Yeah.
from, like, I could be 100 miles away and I could spot something that was a complete unedited ChatGPT output. And I think, like I say, that is the issue. But I agree. I think that will change because people will experience resistance to that.
Mm.
People will then look at, well, I know you've not done that, so I don't value that anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to give my time to that. And I think that's where the shift will happen. And it will be the same with courses and all of that. When every course looks the same, feels the same, sounds the same, eventually your audience is just going to go, well, this sucks.
Yeah.
So, like, we need something else. And they'll vote with their feet. They'll go elsewhere in terms of using their own platforms or creating their own experiences with large language models. And you'll just see all of that course, all those courses that feel like, oh, it's great, AI made 200 courses, just fall off a cliff because no one's going to use them. But that will come. I think it's just it will take time for that. But in some places, it probably already is happening. People are already saying, look, I don't want this AI slop, as it's kind of been coined nowadays. They want something that's more human. No problem if it's AI involved in it. Just don't get AI to do it all and make it so obvious.
Yeah.
It's all AI because it's AI generated image, it's AI generated text. I mean, I hate those personally, where I see them when I go to conferences sometimes when I'm just embarrassed for people because I'm just like, that's obvious what you've done. And you're literally, there's nothing there of you, which is really unfortunate because, as we're talking about, you shouldn't really lose that. Like, your humanity is fundamentally your biggest advantage in all of this.
Mm.
Like, your humanity, your personality, your ability to communicate and articulate stuff. If you lose that and you just become part of a robot farm, then you're in a bit of trouble, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's kind of boring and bland and soulless, isn't it? My colleague James just wrote a really nice article actually
Mm.
about averaging and how there can be a place for using AI for averaging where you just want to do something that's
Yeah.
good enough, gets the job done, maybe cuts the
Mm.
costs of doing it. You need to do it and it doesn't matter. In fact, it could be an
Mm.
advantage that
Mhm.
it's average. But there will always be things where you don't want it to be average. You don't want your
Yeah,
voice to be average. You don't want your creativity to be average. You want to cut through with something that people pay attention to, or do
definitely.
something differently and creatively, innovatively. And that's where I guess we should be questioning why we'd be using a
Yeah.
particular tool if it's giving us a result that isn't. This
Mm.
comes back, doesn't it, to the focus on problems. What are we trying to do and why? And I think if we get in the habit of asking
Mm.
ourselves that first before
Mm.
jumping into kind of thinking we've got to use this because everyone else is, then that's-
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? And the other part of that, which is really interesting and saying good enough, is that as a human, you can take that good enough and you can mold it into something better. I think it's really interesting the way people talk about AI sometimes, because either it's perfection or nothing. It's like people don't seem to be happy in saying, you know what, that helped me do 20% of this task and it made it easier for me to do the other 80%. It's very true. It's like, if it doesn't do 100% of it, it's rubbish and I don't
yeah,
want to use it. And it's like a really odd thing to be like, because I'm like, I'm always thinking that in even my own work, where I'm like, I look at a lot of data, look at a lot of research, look at a lot of reports. Of course, I'm using AI to help me with that, but I'm still using my brain, and AI makes my work maybe 30 to 40% easier. But I've still got to use that 60% of my time and my brain to then go over the bits that are interesting, to dig deeper, to make connective correlations and find evidence on that. But yeah, I just find it strange where it's kind of this, and maybe it goes back to the culture in general of this expectation of instant gratification and the one click thing. It's like, unless it does it all, and then unless it does it to the quality that I want, then I'm not interested. And I just think that's such a shame because there's so much power in the tools. And it may, the biggest thing of it, which may be that it helps you get from good enough to great. And, you can have part of that process. So, yeah, it's interesting watching that happen. But we see that on all fields, like I say, L&D, sales, marketing. It's really interesting to see how people react to tools. And it's just like being happy now with, maybe this is going to be 10% of an edge. It just seems to be the thing now. It's like, do all of it. Unless you do it for me, I don't care. And that's a strange thing for me.
I wonder if that should kind of bring us back to the thinking about
Mm,
psychology and I guess culture, really, that
mm,
it should, I think, give us confidence that we can feel optimistic
Mm.
about how we use these tools because just as you're saying, that's saving you time, but the work couldn't be produced without Ross. It would
Mm.
be it would just be bland or rubbish or not very thoughtful or not bring the critical thinking to it.
Yeah.
It would be AI and not Ross, right? So
100%.
you're not going to lose your job because
Mm.
we still need the Ross in it. And I
Yeah.
wonder if that eventually will kind of come out of this kind of slightly panicky feeling about AI and think about how to use it.
I think it will, and you'll see, much like with, and again, obviously dubious speculation. I haven't got like a bloody crystal ball or know anything, but if you think about social media and how that created all of this different kind of economy of the creator economy, and people understood the technology and how to use that and how to build platforms and brands, whether good or bad. It's a very similar thing with AI. It's like, quite honestly, if you just expect AI to do everything for you and that's what you seek with it, you probably will be out of a job. Like, it's not going to help you. But if you seek to say, much like a lot of these people who are, I think the definition, the industry definition is creators on these platforms that have sat there to understand, how do these systems work? How do I get these systems infused with my personality and then use that as a package to reach people? That's the thing. Because a lot of, when you choose to follow certain creators or read their work or watch their videos because they've got a personality that they've infused with the technology that helps them distribute those messages and systems. I think it's the same thing. I think what we'll see is people will rise out of this who are the ones who will say, okay, I understand these systems and tools. How do I then infuse the things that I'm already good at and then pair it up
Mm,
with this so I can be better? And that can be very simple things like, maybe, you're amazing at creating PowerPoint decks or whatever, but you suck at storytelling. But then maybe AI can come into that and help you as kind of a partner or a coach to be like, well, how can we take you from really good at visualization and then add in the
mm,
storytelling element onto that as well? So then you can enhance it, but then you're the one who's going to be doing the storytelling in that as well. And vice versa. You could say you suck at presentations, but you're a great storyteller and do that. It's kind of a very generic example, but I think it's that point of the people that would do well is who understand the system, that use the tools to amplify what they've already
mm,
got. So amplifying their human skills, not saying, right, I can just sit on the beach in wherever now, I'm going to outsource everything to you and expect that I'm just going to have some kind of standing in the job market or the world, because effectively you then have no USP. What's your USP compared to everyone else if everyone starts automating everything? Which is why it's quite funny for me anyway to listen to a lot of these people who are like, automate your life. Here's how to automate all this stuff. I'm like, I'm not really sure you want to do that. I mean, you want to get some help with stuff, but I don't think you want to automate everything. You want to probably automate and get support on the stuff which is the back end bits that stop you
mm,
from using your human skills and doing the human stuff. But like I say, unfortunately, I think some of that in the cultural zeitgeist at the moment has got lost. And but as you were just saying before, I think that equilibrium will come back,
mm,
because we'll come back around to, eventually people will get over the gimmicks of, well, here's loads of AI video, or here's loads of AI imagery on its own, because that'll get boring. But using that within someone's video or an experience or a documentary that's got human elements is completely different. Like the same with music. It's this, I think it's just adding it into the things that we do, and then people will appreciate that. But I think those things purely on their own, it's just a carbon copy factory.
mm. I think just sort of reflecting on a personal level, I think one of the things that's it's not
Mm,
really stopping me from using AI, but it means I'm not using AI as much as
mm,
I could be. It's actually just comes down to imagination because when you've built up habits and ways of working and particular approaches and how you typically
mm,
sometimes even just on autopilot think about going about doing a
mm,
particular task or job or approaching
mm,
whatever it is, you've probably got quite ingrained
mm,
ways of doing that. And this requires a bit of a shake up
mm,
constantly. If you're going to be sort of questioning and thinking, and it requires a bit of application of
mm,
imagination to think, oh, I could be using AI
mm.
for this. And that's where I think for me it goes beyond being a
Yeah.
tool and something that is a way of working that I feel like personally I don't have any sort of
Mm,
fear
mm,
around AI at all. I'm really
mm,
intrigued by it. I'm completely open to using it, but I haven't quite got my head around times when I could be
mm,
thinking, or I just don't
mm.
stop and think
Yeah.
all the time, oh, this would be a great use of it. I suppose maybe over the next period of time, however long that is, that as we see each other
Hmm.
doing things, experimenting with things, we see use cases, that kind of thing gets easier for
Yeah.
everybody. So the question that I suppose you can get to asking you a question, are you seeing good ways of people sharing ideas and changing habits by just communicating how they're working differently with each other?
Yeah, definitely. That's why I try to be as much as possible, even my own work, quite open and just be like, here's something that I do that sometimes I think no one's going to care about that. And then they do care about it. They think, oh, that's really interesting. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that'd be interesting to other people, but we'll share that anyway. But I see the same thing. But again, going back to the point right at the beginning is you really have to kind of cut through a lot of the noise and rubbish and snake oil kind of stuff that's out there to be like, who's using this in intuitive ways. And it comes in many domains, like some small businesses that use Notebook LM to onboard employees in their retail business or help them keep track of trends, across sales in that organization there, or that small business, I should say. I see little things like I think, God, it's so interesting, like kind of what they're doing there. Or I see other bits where companies, where they're taking big reports or they're taking big articles or research and they're putting them into different AI tools to kind of keep a note of all of these different trends and tracking them and how things are changing and how all of the ways we work are changing and how some of the ways we interact. And I just think again, oh yeah, that's a really smart, long term and valuable way of using it. And it goes beyond the very which still great use cases, but the very simple things of write me an email or summarize this page, that they're very simple. But I think about, oh, okay, yeah, spending the time to read an article yourself and then chuck that into an AI tool and then get that AI tool to give its own view and then you giving your views and then go back and forth on that. I saw someone do that many years ago, right at the beginning of all kind of ChatGPT. I thought, God, that's really interesting. And I still do that to this day. So it's kind of the little things like that where I think the thought partner in, to your point, kind of opening up that kind of like other ways of working and thinking and devil's advocate. And what I really want and what I really like about a lot of this is that it, in ways, if you use it intelligently, it can definitely surprise you. And in my opinion, I think it's made me at times think a lot more critically than I would have done perhaps on my own,
Mm.
especially if I was just doing something in my notebook or whatnot. And it also exposes me to diverse opinions or different thought patterns that I wouldn't have had. And I think that for me as a learning professional is gigantic because
Mm.
it's behavior change. And
Yeah.
that's really what you want. And the capability is there. It's just getting beyond that veil of those basic things that are helpful. But like I say, it's then just picking up stuff from other people who, and like if anyone wants to use it, it's probably the best hack I found for it. Like I literally I'm on Reddit finding stuff from people. Like if you go to Reddit, artificial intelligence, like subreddits, ChatGPT, people will post loads of stuff that they do where they're like, hey, I built this thing, or oh, this is what I did at work to do X, Y, and Z. There's like so much stuff there where you're just like it just inspires you all the time. And there's some stuff that's rubbish, let's be honest, but there's a lot of stuff there where you think, oh my God, that's really smart. Why didn't I think of that? Or there's ways that people are working with it. So I think all of this stuff is around. It's just going to look for it. And then the most important thing, of course, is doing it yourself. Like you can go and watch videos all day long or do whatever, but if you don't go and try it yourself in your actual practice, it's not really kind of much use to you. So again, it will be like, don't bother going and sit there to watch a tutorial on using Midjourney to create loads of images if your job is not a graphic designer or a web designer or something that's not really going to help you. It might find it fun, but it's not actually going to help you. But if you're an accountant and you're working with Microsoft 365 and actually they've now got AI inside Excel, that's something that's really interesting and probably important to you to help you in your workflow. So it's just making those really kind of like clear decisions on what do I say no to so I can focus on the stuff that's actually going to help me. But yeah,
Mm.
in some of that, I mean, there is inspiration and case studies everywhere. I think you have to look for them in places maybe you won't always go and look. And I don't always think social media is the best place in that, because every 5 minutes someone wants to tell you they've got a new AI tool that's going to kill everyone, or they've got a new process that ends the process they spoke about the day before. But things like, I would say Reddit communities on Slack and other places and that are probably the best place, because people are just randomly sharing stuff, going, "Oh, I did this and it worked." You're like, "Man, that's really smart. I'm gonna steal that and try that as well and see how it goes."
Yeah. I mean, from everything you were saying, it really stands out that there's these key skills and ways of thinking emerging that are around being open-minded, being
Mm,
outward looking for ideas and
mm,
input, and being willing to experiment. And I think those kind of key capabilities seem to be
mhm.
really, really crucial. And uh, yeah, I mean, those things are great, aren't they? And I think if we can get comfortable with them.
100%. Yeah.
This has been so interesting. I mean, I think there's obviously a ton more we could talk about, but I'm really grateful for your time. It's been great to talk all of this around with you. I always ask our podcast guests the last
Mm,
question,
mm,
which is speaking to you as a human.
mm.
What's exciting you at the moment? I mean, that might be technology related, or it might be something completely different. Or what are you focused on? What you're looking forward to and motivated about in or out of work?
Um, that's a very deep question.
Mm.
I'm not even sure what the
You
answer would
can
be to
you can
that.
answer it superficially if you prefer. That's absolutely
Well,
fine.
I kind of. It sounds awful. I kind of live day by day, really, and just see things as they come. But yeah. What am I looking forward to? Oh my god, that's got me stumped now. Um, I mean, as a human, it's just cheesy. It's just most things. It's just like, I suppose, like health and happiness and all of that cringy stuff that people were saying. I mean, that's the
Important
main
stuff.
thing that I focus on and optimize for, really. And then, if we tie that into AI, like I'd love to see more innovations from an AI perspective that are less about how, some tool can write loads of posts on LinkedIn for someone, and more about medical care and advancing stuff there, and you know doing stuff in the kind of that field, really. So I'm more looking forward to that. Yeah, but for me in general as a human, it's just yeah, just trying to be healthy and happy. As cringy as that sounds, I don't think any more far ahead in that.
No, it's not cringy at all. It's true, and it's fundamental, isn't it? And however
Mm,
clever technology gets, we're all human, so it matters.
100%.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ross. This has honestly been such a pleasure and mind expanding, but in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming. It feels like things that we can do and think about.
Cool.
So I'm really grateful to you. Thanks for helping us think it through. Where do people find you?
Yeah, easiest thing to do is on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find on there, to be fair. I'm pretty active, so just Ross Stevenson on LinkedIn. I'll send you a link. I'm sure you'll send it out anyway. And then stealthesethoughts.com. So that is where I keep all of my work. So articles, videos, all of that good stuff that people do nowadays. You can find it on stealthesethoughts.com. We've alluded to it. There's a newsletter. I'm not going to force you to sign up to it. If you want to sign up to it and get some, I should say, mostly sarcastic takes and jibes on stuff and technology, then by all means, go and do that, because I'd love to have you as part of that and to learn about some of the things that I'm doing as we've discussed today. But yeah, that's where I hang out.
That's fantastic. We'll share all of that in the show notes.
Cool.
And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I hope everyone who's been listening has really enjoyed this and got as much out of this episode as I have. Please do like, subscribe, and share the episode, and come back for future episodes too. Bye for now.